How's everyone doing? Thank you for joining us for another episode of Chasing Clarity, Health and Fitness Podcast today, joined by none other than the magnificent, amazing Brandon Nick Cruz. But today is episode number 25, the importance of food quality for fat loss and how your food selection impacts your ability to succeed with your diet. But as first, as tradition, dude, can you believe we've already done like a quarter century worth of episodes? 25 today.
I know.
It's
Look
pretty
at that.
shit, pretty fucking crazy.
We're already 6+ months in, so
Yeah,
we
I
got a
know.
lot to go though.
I know.
It seems like we just started this, but at the same time, it has been we have a great collection so far, and I'm looking forward to when we hit number 50 and 100 and so on and so forth. You know what I
Yep.
mean? So it's one of our bucket lists. We checked off 25, now a couple hundred more to go.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be old men by the time we wrap this shit up. But first, dude, I want to get into your weekend. You had Anthony competing. You had travel nightmares from hell. It looked like you just might never fly again. So let's go over
like,
how it went, man. First off, before we get into your travel stuff, tell me about Anthony. Tell me how that went down. I know you guys were pumped. You know, it was over 2 years in the making for this moment. So
Yeah,
put
actually,
us in.
you know what? I got a lot of stuff to catch you up on because although it's only been a week since we recorded, it literally like so many things have taken place since we last recorded on last Tuesday that I actually have a lot to catch you up on. So first, I'll go in order actually. So last week, right after I got off Zoom with you, we kind of did a short podcast, and I told you that I was going to be on Danny Mantranga's podcast. And Danny Mantranga is someone that has worked with Mind Pump Media, who is the number one fitness podcast in the scene. So they've been around for like 7 years, but Danny himself has, he's a multiple gym owner, he's an online trainer. He's also a host of a top ranked fitness podcast on the iTunes podcast charts. And at this point, he's gotten over 500,000 downloads. So he had invited me to come on the show. So for anyone, that show went live on Thursday. So for anyone who wants to hear about how to make dieting phases more successful and less stressful, that's what we covered. So definitely check that episode out that I did with Danny. That was a great opportunity to be on his platform. We had a phenomenal conversation. So that was something that, I really looked forward to. But that was Tuesday. And then Thursday, I flew out bright and early to San Antonio to join my client, Anthony Scalza, like you said, who I was peaking for his first IFBB Pro Show of the season. And just like a little backlog on people, I've been working with Anthony for 2.5 years. At this point, Jeff's met him multiple times. He travels out with me a lot when I present at conferences. So we're very much in support of each other whenever, he comes to support me at educational seminars that I present at. And then I go to his shows, you know what I mean? And obviously, I've been coaching him for quite some time. And so overall, like the weekend in totality, before I go into all the hecticness that took place, overall the weekend was a big success for us, as I was able to bring his physique in at its all-time best, which honestly is saying a lot, my man. Like, this kid's been on the Olympia level stage. He's been at a high level for quite some time. He's been a pro for 5 years at this point. And so anytime we can exceed and literally crush one of his all-time best packages, that's a win in my book. And really, I've tried to transform and improve Anthony's mindset, because as with many type A individuals, they get very locked in just on the end result. And when he came to me, he was kind of burnt out from the competition scene, just due to only having that focus, especially with coaches he had worked on in the past, or worked with in the past. So I really tried to form that focus and really get it more on the process in and of itself, because that's what's going to yield you long-term results. If you only focus on the outcome and you don't get that outcome, you're crushed. You know what I mean? And it's almost like you're in no man's land. So besides that, we actually shot multiple days of training and peaking content. The first part of which is now just went live on Anthony's YouTube channel. So if anyone wants to see that, you guys can look up Anthony Scalza on YouTube, and you will see like some of my rationale behind how I peaked him, his carb load, a lot of nutrition information, because I got to record that as well. But like I was telling you before, it's literally never a dull moment when I travel, my man, especially business related travel for some reason. And maybe this is my viewpoint because I used to travel as a career. So I was on flights so frequently that obviously if you fly more often, you're going to have a higher likelihood or a higher susceptibility to have, I don't want to say negative experiences, but less than ideal experiences when traveling. But anyway, so going out to San Antonio the night before the flight, I saw there was a storm watch in the area of the airport that I was flying out of. So I was unable to fly out of any of the airports that were near me. So I needed to go out of 3 hours away from where I live currently. And so I saw this storm report, and there was a lot of information or a lot of news coming out that there were going to be long flight delays. And now my whole thing was I was trying to get out there by the afternoon on Thursday to be able to see Anthony in person, because obviously we only had Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday morning he was getting on stage. So the night before, I rescheduled my flight to a much earlier flight. So I was able to get out there and miss that storm. And I was able to get to San Antonio much earlier. But then on the
Mhm.
way home, I had to change my flights as well. You know what I mean? And I couldn't get a straight flight back. So I had to take a connecting flight that initially went from San Antonio to Houston. So it was supposed to be like a 50-minute flight. You know, I was going to have an hour layover. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. You know, I'm going to get some work done. I'll get work done on the plane. I'll get work done, you know, on the connecting flight. I've never been to Houston Airport. So
Oh, it's a
anyway,
shithole.
yeah.
It's an absolute
Well,
shithole. Houston hobby sucks.
so I was only set an hour layover, but we ended up getting delayed on the actual runway for my first flight. So by the time we landed in Houston, I had 20 minutes until boarding closed for my flight. Now, here's the thing. I was on the furthest terminal away from where I needed to be for the flight. And the other thing is, I got this flight 3 days before, 4 days before. You know, I got this ticket 4 days before the flight left. So I got the last seating. So I literally ran off the. I grabbed my stuff. I ran. I was, you know, I was like, excuse me. I have to get through. I fucking sprinted off that plane. I ran through the whole fucking terminal. I just got on. I was 1 minute before the plane took off, and they're all yelling at me and stuff. And I'm like, listen, I had a fucking flight delay. Like, anyway, I'm sweating. Then I didn't get to pick, you know, obviously the seating, because all these seats are, you know, obviously, you know, done early in advance. So I'm in the middle seat and I'm sweating. I'm like profusely sweating. I'm waiting for the plane to take off. And I'm like, please, God, just let there, you know, because San Antonio and Houston, it was 100 degrees out. So it's hot as could be. So I'm sweating in the seat. I feel bad for those that are on my left and my right, because I'm in the middle, and I'm just waiting for this flight to take off. And I'm like, as soon as this flight takes off, I'm going to be able to relax. I'm going to put on the AC, and we'll be good to go. Well, we get stuck on the runway again for an hour. There were just too many planes in front of us. So I'm sitting there just sweating profusely, like going hypo over here. I haven't eaten all morning. It was just you know, it was a mess. But you know, now I'm stuck in this middle aisle. For anyone that doesn't know, I'm 6'2", so I don't fit in that for by any means. So a 4-hour flight turned into a 5-hour flight, 5.5-hour flight actually. And so then I finally land in Newark, and I go to my baggage claim. And now, mind you, this is a massive flight. Like, this is probably one of the biggest planes that I've ever been on. And so I wait there for close to an hour for my you know, my baggage, and I'm thinking nothing of it, because I'm like, there's so many people on here, you know what I mean? And there was flight delays, and it was late, and there's other, you know, other flights that are in that same baggage claim area.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm waiting, and all the bags come out, and there's a list of 3 people that have their stuff missing, but it had already flashed on the sign, and I'm not in there. So I'm like, oh, I'm good. I just keep waiting. So at the end, like, I'm not seeing anything come out, and you know, the little baggage dispenser area is coming around, and I'm like, hey man, you know, is there any chance that there's a bag behind there, like, or you're stuck? You know, I've been waiting here for an hour. She sees me sitting there, you know, standing there. Well, at the end of the day, my suitcase did not come out. So on top of all this, they had lost my luggage. Somewhere within they said within the connecting flight, something got, because of the delay, they didn't have enough time to get. I was like apparently I was the only person that had that flight from San Antonio to Houston, and then Houston um to Newark. And so with that connection, that's why I was the only person. Like, they almost took off without me, because I was running through that airport. And so mind you, this is now, like, by the time I left Newark Airport, which is over 2 hours away from where I live, it's like 8:30 at night. So I'd been dropped off at the airport at before 5 a.m. by Anthony in Texas. I've been traveling for, you know, 15 hours at this point. So needless to say, I'm pretty jet lagged today. I'm sleep deprived. I'm dieted down. But, you know, we are here. And like I always tell you, I don't miss. And that's my mentality in everything in life. So it doesn't matter what's going on, what I've been going through, what the flight delay did, what I lost. I feel, you know, or how I feel, you know, I have this never miss mentality with my habits, my obligations. And so, you know, I've made that for myself. And that's really what sets me up for success. I often have, you know, clients that will travel, and they'll have things come up, stresses in life, and they just ask me, like, how would I approach it? And I really just reinforce, you know, I'll tell them has helped me from my experience, but I really do have this never miss mentality. And I speak to that with clients. I tell Anthony about that. That was something that we were focused on this weekend. It's like, this applies to my workouts, to my meals, when I'm at home or even when I'm on the road. This applies to my emails and my client check-ins. Even like in this case, I had very limited access to Wi-Fi this weekend, but I did not miss a single check-in or single email. I was still on time with everything, and even these podcast commitments. So, guys, things aren't going to be ideal when you travel, when you're not traveling in life. Things come up. There's stresses that you didn't expect, but as long as you can put your best foot forward, you can make it a success out of anything. So that's my piece of wisdom for this week.
Man, I'm similar to you when I travel. I'm like, well, fuck, I can't help that. You know what I mean? Like, it's frustrating, but it's legitimately out of my control. And I just,
100%.
and that's like the thing that I think bodybuilding has taught me. You got to control what you can control. But I'm glad you guys did good. What I want to ask, because I know the audience is curious, because you all, if you guys are listening, be sure to go follow Anthony's YouTube page. Be sure to go follow him. I think he's a rising star. I probably don't have the eye for the sport, but he's at least a damn good man with a good heart, and that's hard to come across in this industry. But what does he need to improve? Did you guys get any feedback on that a little bit?
So it was a brand new judge. We had never gotten feedback from this judge. So I'm waiting for feedback to come back, because generally what ends up happening with the IFBB, if you know one of the judges and you send over your email or you wait, and in this case, we were first in the show. It went masters, physique, and then open men's physique were the first two categories. And then we had to go through classic physique, and then went the female class, so bikini, which was stacked, women's physique, all these other classes. We didn't stay till the end of finals to be able to get judging feedback. So we were waiting for the judges to answer us via email, which generally will happen, around Tuesday or Wednesday. So around this time this week. But overall, just, I had a friend that actually got second in the class itself. My boy Kali, shout out to him. He just needs more size. Honestly, that's what they're looking for in this show in particular. He was, and I say this with no bias, every single competitor, including Kali, who got second, including many of the top five, said he was the most conditioned guy in the class.
Dude, he was dug the fuck out.
Oh, he was peeled beyond belief. Yeah. So guys, I suggest you look up some of the pictures that I have of him, or even his own footage, because you'll see him. He's inside out, and the best package he's ever looked. I mean, the kid had striated glutes, for God's sakes, and he's a men's physique pro. And so he was peeled head to toe. There was one other kid, actually. It's funny. A good friend of mine, I have another pro client named Matt Mugford, has a very good friend, Zach Savoy, who's an upcoming rising star in terms of the IFBB. The kid's been like top 5 or top 10 in his last 4 pro shows. Very good athlete. And because of the last name, it was him and Anthony, and they were literally the most peeled individuals. But from the back, there was no one that beat Anthony in terms of conditioning. It's just size, man. A lot of these guys, honestly, I know a lot of these top, pros, whether it be through working with them with supplement companies, or it's from, being a travel and having worked out with them. A lot of these guys would not actually make the classic class. So they are bigger than the actual classic physique competitors. And a lot of people don't realize that, because they don't see them without board shorts. They don't see them hit actual, most muscular poses and actual, they're standing there essentially. It's a pose, right, but it's more of a relaxed pose. But if you were actually to see them flex in terms of a bodybuilding aesthetic pose, if you look at someone like a Jeremy Bundia, or you look at a Kali Courtley, who got second, or you look up some of the other guys within the category, they could easily walk on and do classic physique, but many of them would not actually make the weight class. They would be capped. And so they stay in men's physique because A, that's where they turn pro in, or B, they don't want to force themselves down and have to chew away at muscle. So a lot of these guys are coming in bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's just not the game that Anthony's ever wanted to play. From a health perspective as well as a longevity perspective, and it's not the look that he likes. And so ultimately we're going after, and I always reinforce this to him, we're going after his best physique, and that's what we brought this weekend. And we have another show that, I'm in the process of peaking for this weekend, which is Fort Lauderdale. So we're praying that the storm doesn't cancel it. The show promoters did say that it's still on, so we are in the process of peaking him. Every couple hours I'm getting updates from. However, we will bring another, enhanced package. But I will tell you, I collected so much data from him this past weekend. I mean, I had to load this kid. I mean, I've been able to reverse diet him the last 3 weeks, and I ended up having to, carb load him on 2,000 grams of carbs. I mean, the kid's insulin sensitivity and his ability to uptake nutrients and partition them. I always say a healthy body is a responsive body. He's a great example of that. Blood glucose was on check the entire time, so it's just it's great experience to be able to collect this type of stuff and then use that as we move forward.
Sweet, man. Well,
So
I'm
tell
glad
me,
you guys had a good time.
first of all, guys, everyone in the audience, do it, if you're in your car, if you're out on a walk, happy birthday to Jeff. Happy belated birthday. This was this past Sunday. So my man, tell me about your birthday.
Dude, it was really good. We left town Friday, got up there, checked in. I actually went for the first time on the hill that I broke my leg on in the skateboard accident. I have not been on that hill since 1989. Dude, I was fucking crazy. The hill that I like let my brake off my car at the door that I like started the skateboard. I hit 28 miles an hour on my car when I was on that skateboard. So like I flew like a good 20 plus feet with my broken legs up underneath me. So it was crazy to like take that in. And then the other hill, I had that bike accident on. I see how I made that mistake in the rain. Like the turn was too sharp. Like there was just stuff that made sense, but kind of like made a joke. I was like, I see why my mom hated me. Like there was no reason for me to do this on the skateboard. I was telling Thayer that
brave and daring.
I was, yeah. I mean, like that's how I am in business though. Like I've never lost that chip on my shoulder. Like I'm willing to try
you
because
don't fear losing.
Nah, because you know what? You're never going to be a winner if you don't fear losing. You know what I mean? Like
hey, if you're going to fail fast.
Yeah, exactly. I take the Silicon model approach, in business, as which Jason Coley and I actually are going to start working on that idea I told you about that blew your brain apart in the backyard. We start beginning that on Friday. I think we're going to redefine the way that coaching teams recruit and develop. So it's pretty cool. But anyway, did that. Went to my favorite restaurant. Went to the Old City. Got up Saturday, man. Had a nice breakfast at First Watch, got real high, microdosed some LSD, and made our way. We stumbled up on Barstool Sports, like pop-up, like surprise thing that they did, and hung out there and had that for a little bit. Went to the game, 102,000 people, dude.
Wow, man.
It was sold out. It was so my ears are still ringing. Like I have like this perpetual ring in my ear now.
I'm right there with you, but it's from the flight. My ears still haven't popped.
Oh, really? So it was good, man. Like the game was great. We won, had a great dinner, got up Sunday, leisure. It was just a weekend of peace, quiet, and it was just very nice to unplug. I deleted, I don't carry Gmail on my phone anyway, but like I just put my do not disturb on. Clients were super supportive of me, just being like, hey, I'm going to take a few days, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. So, all in all, it was a great weekend. For the last 2 years, this be my third year now that I've done a birthday exactly the way I wanted to do a birthday.
That's awesome, man. That's
I tell everybody that, man. I'm like, that's one day out of the year that you could take and do something with it. So next year I'm planning, I think I'm going to go to Laramie, Wyoming for my birthday.
What is out there?
I love Wyoming. So before I was going to do Iron House 2, you don't know this about me, but I was scouting out 10 to 20 acres of land and outside Laramie, Wyoming to have that I was going to retire on.
Really? Now, what is the appeal?
No one's out there. I could drink coffee butt ass naked on a rocking chair.
You could do that now in Nashville, my man.
I mean, I could, but my neighbors might peek, and I want money for my OnlyFans if I'm going to do it. It's not free material, but nonetheless, I just fell in love with Wyoming. I mean, I wouldn't like live there forever, but I would like go back there. That would be a place I would back and forth. Yeah, and it'd be something cool to pass on to my kids. Like, land never goes away. I think you could relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's probably like why I think everybody I've talked to who lives up Northeast likes it when they come down to the South. Because there's land, you can actually like get a house, get a little space, get a little something for yourself. It's half the price
in comparison. In comparison to what we get up here.
Yeah,
more bang for your buck.
Yeah, and I just think there's something cool about being able to push that down the line. So I was going to do that, but I'm gonna go there next year. It's either there or Boise, Idaho. I'm gonna do one of the two.
My man, if you go to Boise, let me know. I'll go. I actually just had my Facebook memories pop up. So for anyone that doesn't know, previous to doing online nutrition coaching or during the same time, I used to be an executive at multiple supplement companies. At one time, I was the key accounts brand manager for NutriBio Labs, which is a big prominent supplement company in the industry. And my main account for the country was bodybuilding.com. So I used to go every month to Boise. And actually, I just had an anniversary pop up that 4 years ago today, I presented for a week straight in front of the entire company, including the VP, the CEO, and I brought an all new product line that I had formulated, one of the products that I had formulated to that and presented on it. And it was, memories from, my VP, one of my closest friends, Dan, celebrating us getting in there and really, cementing ourselves as a top, 30 brand, which is immense, especially at that time in the industry. So Boise always has a special place to me because
So
it was a place,
beautiful.
100%. And it's a
Yeah.
place that initially, when I first started getting on the boards, I went to bodybuilding.com. So that's how I interacted with
Yeah.
Alan Aragon starting in 06. Or when I was in college, we had guys on the board like Alberto Nunez and Steve Cook and things like that. And you would watch their videos, their trailers and stuff. And then, a few years ago, actually, I was able to go there, shoot content, shoot footage, be in their gym, you know, do content for them, be an editor and a contributing author for their website in terms of creating articles, but also being a feature model on their website. So it was an incredible experience and an all-encompassing. It kind of brought things, full circle from the
Yeah.
kid that started buying supplements and reading their articles to
Yeah.
someone that was an executive selling product to them now, making content for their site and being featured. So it's always a great memory, and I really love getting out there.
Good, man. Well, I think we better get cracking in this. Ladies and gentlemen, real quick, while I've got your all's attention, please be sure to like us, share us, keep doing all the awesome support you guys are. If you guys can rate us on Spotify and iTunes, that would help us out a lot as well. Maybe if you guys make it real serious, me and Brandon might actually create a web page and shit and put some stuff up. You never know. I mean, it just depends. But anyway, let's get into this. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the importance of food quality for fat loss. I think there's a lot of confusion because people are like, you got the if it fits your macros crowd, you've got this crowd, that crowd, everyone's got a crowd part of it. But today we really wanted to dive into, does your food selection, does it really impact your ability to succeed with your diet? So we broke it down to 5 main topics. And the first one we're going to cover for you is this food quality. The food quality versus the quantity debate. Is it energy balance all that matters, Brandon?
Yeah, so there's a lot of individuals within this industry who will say that energy balance is all that matters when it comes to fat loss. So as long as you eat less and you exercise more, you'll lose fat. And quotes like this that say, eat less, exercise more are examples of what I like to call simple stories, which they're technically true. Like energy balance does matter. Creating a deficit is the most effective way to lose body fat and the only way to effectively lose body fat. But these are things that are truthful but aren't useful or helpful because they're true in theory, but they aren't helpful in practice, especially when you work with clients and real people in the real world. And if you pay attention to many of the debates on diets, you'll see nutrition has become as contested of a topic as politics or as confusing of a topic as like something like astrophysics. Like people are throwing out messages out there left and right, and it's just like they try to take these opposing viewpoints. And I think that really comes from the fact that the fitness industry tends to draw on extremist personalities. So we find a lot of debate between camps. So every day we see, and I'm sure you see this as well, Jeff, and I know that a lot of clients reach out to me in regards to, hey, did you see what Paul Saladino said, or did you see what Liver King said, or you know what I mean, like these people
Dude,
that I
it's
don't
so
follow.
frustrating. I'll be like, who gives a fuck what they say? I'll be I mean, to some degree, yeah, I get like it's information being passed on, but there's like a marketing thing because a lot of those guys are just master content creators, in
100%.
that regard. So
Yeah,
I've just
so
read too many books on marketing and all that shit. When you're in business, you read that and you're like, oh, that's just that message. You know what I mean? You move on.
yeah, they're just trying to reel people in. And a lot of people don't realize that though. So every
True.
day we'll hear, different influencers and people arguing back and forth about, calories and quantity versus quality. And there's a lot of confusion around this topic. So this is why we wanted to tackle it, because some will say that calories are all that matters, such as those in the if it fits your macros crowd, that believe in food quantity over everything. And then we have other people that will say calories don't matter. And they're like on the opposite end of the spectrum. And they say all that's important is food quality. And this would be something like the paleo crowd or the carnivore crowd. Like you can eat as much meat as you want. And it's like, what I find this just leads to a bunch of confusion. And a lot of people, they don't have a background in nutrition, nor should they need to have a background in nutrition to understand these type of things. But unfortunately, our industry has gotten so nuanced and argumentative and contested that
Mhm.
it's made to be black and white, which nutrition should never be. Like nutrition, our dietary approach should never be something that we have to narrow down to one thing or another. And like in the case of picking between food quantity or food quality, as proper nutrition considers both. And this is important because if you only consider the quantity of calories, all you have control over is weight loss or weight gain.
It's
because the
true.
quantity of your intake will determine your state of energy balance, which is important, but that's just the first step. Yet, if you want to actually improve your body composition by gaining muscle and losing body fat, or optimizing performance and recovery and bettering your health and how you feel, you need to consider the quality of your food along with the amount of calories you're taking in. So you have to consider both. And it's really important. A lot of people are so focused, especially in today's day and age, on the quantity that they disregard the quality. So the quality of the foods you select to make up your diet will also impact your micronutrient status, your hunger and satiety levels, your digestive health, and your hormone health. So, yes, energy balance in terms of food quantity matters, but so does food quality, as both play an important role in optimizing both our nutrition when we're looking to improve our body composition. So, we need to consider both.
Do you think that people whiff on the importance of this just because they don't know any better or because they want to believe that there's an easier way? Or do you think it's half and half? Because owning a gym, I have a unique perspective because I get to talk to so many people, right? Like literally all the time. And I think it's almost split down the middle. Like when you really get into it, like example, I watch these young kids now. I'm probably going to cause a firestorm. I don't give a shit. I've yet to see the specific training where people are taking these attachments, manipulating these machines into positions that take them 72 minutes to set up to do 8 reps in this perfect form. I've yet to see these guys grow an appreciable amount of muscle doing this shit, and they don't do the basics, right? And it's almost like, dude, come on, just get underneath a heavy barbell row. Like, people come up to me be like, hey, how'd you build your chest? I'm like, not doing the shit you do. You know what I mean? And it's like offensive. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but I mean, like, 30 to 40 years of kind of like a big picture thinking, not saying things haven't gotten better, but I almost think by nature, people just kind of look for like that approach might be
Now,
just a little bit easier gets mistaken for smarter. What do you think?
yes, so you're referring to right now, you're making an analogy to the biomechanics movement that has really come over. But I will
Correct.
say that I think that this is more of an argument for overlooking food quality because initially
Okay,
food
fair.
quality was really what people focused on. And then it shifted away due to like the if it fits your macros approach to more on food quantity. And as soon as people saw, hey, I could fit a couple fun foods into my diet
Yeah.
and lose body fat, all of a sudden it became only about that. So when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people, more people, and I'll tell you, I'm going to say from my own perspective, based on who I've worked with over 1,000 clients at this point and who I interact with, a lot of people come to me and they're educated on the macronutrient side. So they know how to track calories, macronutrients.
Yeah.
They've done if it fits your macros approaches, but they don't know about nutrition in and of itself. They know nothing about nutritional biochemistry. They know nothing about food selection. They know nothing about micronutrients. And that's really where they're getting which it's really the bottleneck within their ability to make progress. And so in my opinion, I think that we need to put more of a focus on food quality right
Right.
now in today's day and age because everyone's talking about macros. Every post that you go on, every coach is talking about your macros and your calories and tracking and this, that, and the other. And I put out a lot of content about that too. But I also reinforce it with the importance of food quality. So I really think we got to start there because that is what's being neglected most. So when it comes down to it, to fat loss, we know that energy balance is the key underlying principle that governs our ability to lose body fat, meaning we need to be burning more calories than we're consuming. However, what I really see is that often that results in many taking this like narrow-minded approach where they only focus on the quantity aspect of their diet in terms of their calories and macros, and they disregard or they overlook the quality aspect of nutrition, which is why so many people struggle during a fat loss phase. So, although our total calorie and macronutrient intake serve as the foundation to our diet, we cannot overlook the quality of the foods we make up our diet of and the micronutrients they contain and expect to succeed in a fat loss phase and beyond the fat loss phase itself because the quantity of the nutrients we take in should be viewed as like the first rung of the hierarchy of importance when setting up a fat loss focused diet. But the next thing, so we got the first rung, that's the foundational step. But the next thing we need to focus on is the quality of those nutrients, which is an important step that many miss. And that's what I'm interacting, or that's what I come in contact with. And ultimately, this limits a lot of individuals' ability to effectively manage their hunger, stick to their calorie budget, and adhere to the diet long enough to effectively lose body fat, as well as maintain that fat loss, which we see is even a bigger issue than losing body fat in and of itself. Because once the diet is over, they haven't really nailed in the skills of food quality. They don't know much about it. And this is why some of the most important aspects of nutrition are our food choices, the quality of those choices, and the micronutrients those sources contain. So I'll tell you personally, like when I design a diet plan for clients, especially when their goal is to maximize fat loss and especially as well as to maintain muscle tissue, um, some of my main focuses are food quality, selection, and composition. And I'm educating them on that. So, in today's episode, I think it's really important that we cover the importance of food quality and how influential the choices we make around our food selection is during a fat loss phase, especially since this is a topic that's often neglected, even by other nutrition professionals, due to either a lack of knowledge or, frankly, honestly, I'm going to tell you this because I mentor a lot of other coaches. I find that a lot of people they don't want to, and this applies to other coaches as well, they're fitness professionals, they don't want to spend the time and invest the time, the effort, and attention diving into the details and nuances of nutrition for their clients. And honestly, this is an issue that's gotten even worse and worse and comes up more frequently ever since If It Fits Your Macros became popular, especially within the last decade or so. So, Jeff, I'm sure you can relate to this, but literally every week I receive new inquiries from someone who's interested in coaching with me, but who's been working with another coach or another nutrition professional. And when I ask them to see their current nutrition plan or their nutritional intake, to get an idea of what they're doing, because I always want to get an idea of their dieting history or what they've done previously. It's like when they send it over to me, they'll send me the spreadsheet. They'll send me the Excel spreadsheet, and it's just a sheet with calories and macros, or just the three macros, with no further information, no context, no education or instruction guiding them as the client on what they should be making those numbers up of and what they should be aiming for in terms of food choice and quality, micronutrients, sodium intake, fiber, and other various aspects of nutrition. It's like, here's these three, numbers, and take it and go. And they kind of just like throw these numbers out and tell the client to run with them. And that's, often when I'm interacting with these individuals who are coming to me for coaching, they want more detail, they want more education, they want to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and be guided, because coaching isn't just about programming. There's a difference between coaches and programmers. Coaches guide you through the process and help you along the way to learn what you're doing as well as how your body's responding, whereas a programmer is someone that could just do numbers and spreadsheets. So really what they're receiving is programming rather than coaching. And honestly, at this point, the nutrition coaching industry has continued to become saturated with more and more coaches, but the number of quality and educated coaches entering the industry seems to be dwindling, in my opinion, as many are so focused on just taking on as many clients as possible that they claim to be a nutrition coach or a nutrition professional, yet most of them completely neglect food quality, as it's much easier to just spit out this quick cookie cutter plan with a calorie target or macronutrient prescription for protein, carbs, and fats, than it is to design a comprehensive nutrition plan that considers a client's needs from both a calorie, macro, and micronutrient perspective in order to make sure that they not only look their best, but they also perform, function, and feel their best. And our food choices need to go beyond just the calories they contain and the macros they provide. We should be looking at all the beneficial micronutrients and cofactors contained in them, as well as how well they manage hunger and regulate our appetite, as ultimately no calorie target in the world will work if a client is starving and can't consistently stick to it long enough to see results. So this is really why I believe that we need to shift our focus more to food quality, not because it's more important than food quantity, it isn't, but because our industry has made it so much about macronutrient coaching, where people are just, whether they're coaching themselves or being coached by someone else, they're only getting these three numbers and these targets. And they're so narrow-mindedly focused on that they're disregarding, they're missing the forest for the trees, and they're overlooking food quality and focusing so much on the numbers, but they're not succeeding in their goal. So obviously there's a bottleneck in the system. There's an issue where they need to become more educated on the other aspects of nutrition besides just the calories and macronutrient and energy balance aspect of it.
Well, you asked me how I do things. I actually go off Mediterranean. I think it's a very great, good, simple approach for clients. So I give a grocery list, and then what I do is in their folder, I upload a folder with a bunch of different samples of the meal plans that I actually have put together for myself to show them. And then I have my clients be like, hey, I want you to build what you would like to do to hit these numbers. And then I want you to make sure you can look at the micronutrients. And then we start breaking out. That way they're educated over the course of weeks when they check in, because if you just throw everything at them, it's overwhelming and they're just going to go opposite direction to, I want a simple plan to follow and execute on. That's fine. But usually when I get people, they've usually tried and failed at a diet and exercise program multiple times. So at this point, I'm like, no, 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 no. You'll never have to ask another person how to write you a meal plan. You will understand how to weigh out food, how to build something for yourself that's sustainable, and where you need to pick up areas in your diet to better fortify your health. So that's usually the approach I have. I do think this much. That's the final polish off point of the importance of food quality during fat loss phase. Before we get to the next one, I'll let you clean up anything you want there. I've done two different preps before in the sense of one wasn't if it fits your macros prep, and the other one was a just basic I ate Mediterranean. These are my simple foods. I'm a geared athlete. Like I do trend, I do GH, I do all that stuff to compete. I can tell you what blood work looks like for multiple preps, pretty good clean food choices. And I can tell you what the difference in my blood work looked like on the if it fits your macros. I had a little bit higher C-reactive protein. My liver enzymes were a little elevated.
Which let's just hit on for anyone in the audience that doesn't know, that is an inflammatory marker.
Yep,
That could
correct.
be from digestive inflammation, that could be from total systemic inflammation, just more stress essentially
Right.
in the system.
And the other funny thing is my homocysteine marker, which is normally 5. It's normally a fucking 5. So it's very low. I'm very low on that. Was a 12. It was the first time I had ever seen a double digit homocysteine in all my years. And you're talking a guy who does 300-400 mgs of trend the last 2 weeks, all that shit. I mean, that came up in the 90s, 2000s. It is what it is. I make no amends. But I'm just being an honest person here. So I'm like, hey, I've seen both sides of the spectrum. The results, I can maybe say a little bit. So I felt like I felt like that inflammation showed up in spots that I normally carry more body fat per se. It was weird. Like my low back just wouldn't come in as tight on the if it fits your macros one, where on the other one I was like pulled in, like 2 weeks out, which is different for me. So there were just little things I noticed, but they were enough to make a difference, in my opinion. And I can tell you the other thing that was interesting is I felt a little bit more tired on that prep, like just a little bit more drained. So take it for what it's worth. B, I'll toss it back to you real quick on the importance of food quality or fat loss phase polish off before you move to topic 3.
No, absolutely, man. I will tell you that I've done 15 preps over the years, and I've done them both ways. I've done the bro diet, which was the
Yeah, I've
chicken and
done that.
broccoli. I've done the chicken and
Tilapia for
broccoli,
days.
where I was micronutrient deficient by the end of that one. I have done
Yep.
the if it fits your macros, where it was very flexible and it was fitting things in, and I was trying to be cute. I was playing macro Tetris, and I will tell you by the end of that diet, A, I was starving. B, it was hard to adhere. C, I was so decision fatigued because I was trying to play macro Tetris at the end of the night that there were often times that I was so frustrated that my cortisol was through the roof. And it was really hard to peak for that contest because I wasn't having consistency. And the other thing is, when you're utilizing more of if it fits your macros plan, it's more difficult whether you do it with a client or you do it with yourself to consistently track trends and progress over time, because day to day there's so many fluctuations in your sodium content from these processed foods. There's so much deviations between the water fluctuations that you see on your scale weight, and it's less consistency as a whole, where I realized I was doing myself a disservice. So during that prep at 4 weeks out, I went right back into a meal plan where I designed something based off the macronutrient targets that I had.
Mhm.
And I really stuck with these things because I was also experiencing a lot of digestive discomfort with the more food variety. I was experiencing much more cravings, a much higher appetite, which already is increased during a diet in and of itself. So I was literally seeing
Yeah.
that I was making it harder for myself, and I didn't feel well overall. Like I wanted to
Yeah,
see
it's
it
different.
through.
You just feel off. There's like you can't put
Yeah,
your finger on it, but something's not right.
this was when if
Yeah.
it's your macros was very prevalent, and everyone around me was doing it in that manner, and I wanted to try it out. It's not that I wanted to fit junk food in, or fit a thing of ice cream every night, but I was like, you know what, everyone's telling me that I could get shredded eating a Halo top at night. Let me just experiment with this, because I have clients coming to me who want to take this approach, and I need to be able to. I've always been someone like that. When early on in my career, when I was a personal trainer, I had a lot of people coming to me. Ketogenic diets were really popular. They've come back into fruition or into popularity recently in the last couple of years. But at that time, it was another wave of keto. And really, I've never digested fats very well. However, I did 4 to 5 months of strict ketogenic diet with 50 grams of carbs or under during that time, to experiments with it, to be able to relay my experiences and be able to relate to my clients. And so I've always been one that I consider everything an N of one, experiment. And I love the research, I love science, but I also like to experiment on myself and tinker with stuff so that I understand not only what it's doing to my physiology, but also my psychology, so that I could relay that, or even just be able to recount on that experience when a client comes to me in a similar situation. But with the if it your macros approach, or the disregard of food quality, and just, I was nailing my macros because I was very good at, tracking and analyzing things, but there was components of it that just wasn't working for me. And I was seeing that I was having to lower my calories more than in previous preps. And I also believe at this point, because of how much I know about like the thermic effect of feeding, we see a double, we see twice as high of a thermic effect of feeding of whole foods as compared to processed foods, which we did a full episode on the thermic effect of
Yeah,
feeding
we
if
did.
anyone wants to go back and recount that. But I believe that I had lost a lot of what's considered, diet induced thermogenesis, because I was eating all these processed, refined foods essentially. And so I wasn't feeling as well. My appetite was definitely not managed as well. I wasn't getting the micronutrient variety and diversity that I needed. And it was didn't yield to a better physique, a better feel, better performance, nothing. It was all in the negative. So it's something that I have not taken that approach. And I've been very micronutrient focused and health focused since that point. And like I always say, a healthy body is a responsive body. And that starts with the type of fuel that you put into your tank. So if you expect to be a sports car and you're trying to rev yourself up, you're not going to put yourself regular, oil in, or you're not going to put regular gasoline in. You're going to go for premium. So why would you do anything less than that in terms of your food quality? So that's really where I stand.
I couldn't agree more. Now we have the next one we want to talk about. The mistake many make with their food choices during a diet. I think we've taken pot shots at this
Yeah.
along the way. I think for my personal approach is I don't know. I think from owning a gym, I have very interesting, like competitors, in my opinion, if you're a competitor, you're trying to compete, you know what's up. Like make it harder. That way the prep's easier. You know what I mean? Like my off season is just as boring as my current, during prep. Like I don't get cute with it, anything like that. But I think the thing that people make mistakes with food choices is when they get food bored, rather than like sitting down and looking at other options, they go on social media, Pinterest, and start seeing all these crazy things. And before you know it, like the food choices get skewed. You know what I mean? Because you're like, dude, I have 400 grams carbs. Like I can bake that. And you can start doing this shit. And I think it's just like it's I don't know. We're always looking to be pleased some way, and a lot of people find it through food. And when you're already kind of going through something that like the rest of your day, Brandon, the rest of your life, every day you have to eat good in order to look good. That's just, I'll be honest to the audience. I think that sucks, but it's just enough, for as Brandon says, for every gimme, there's a gotcha. But I do think that us touching on this would probably be good. So from your perspective, from mine, it's just, I think people just rather than go back and look at something that might actually be beneficial to their long-term goals, they just go snap in the moment. Social media is an ugly monster, in my opinion. Like people watch food porn during prep. I'm like, why would you torture yourself like that? Like that, like
100%.
I would not like go. That's like to me going down the cookie aisle like 2 weeks out from a show. Like why would I do
Unnecessary
that?
torture.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so honestly, the main mistake I see many make with their food choices is very similar to that. And it's really, keeping in tasty, hyperpalatable foods in the
Yeah.
diet. And what they do is, in order to do that, they just reduce the portion size of these foods. And so, as they get deeper into the diet, they actually have to reduce them even more. And the issue with taking this approach where you're still fitting in these tasty foods into your diet is that the longer we diet and the leaner we get, the more metabolic adaptations we face. So our energy expenditure, our NEAT levels significantly decrease, which reduces the amount of calories we can eat and lose fat on. Our leptin levels go down, which lower our satiety and fullness to meals. So if you're eating these hyperpalatable foods that already aren't satiating in and of itself, you're only compounding that. And then hunger hormones like ghrelin go up, which make us experience even more hunger. So all of these adaptations make fat loss more difficult because now we're burning less calories per day, which eats away at the deficit that we initially created, which is further compounded by the fact that we're now also hungrier. So if you continue trying to fit in fun foods and just do so by cutting down the portion of them, the amount of food volume, which we spoke about last week in being a key determinant for fullness, like we really seek out food volume and food weight to induce satiety because of the gastric stress receptors in the stomach. If you continue to just pull down food volume and food amount and just use portion control, you're going to you're going to be having to pull down food volume to maintain a caloric deficit, but your hunger is also going to continue steadily increasing. Um, so the fact that you haven't prioritized high satiety, low energy density foods like we spoke about last week, which provide a lot of bang for your buck in terms of food volume and satiation, you're if you're choosing these hyperpalatable foods, which we already know drive passive overconsumption, you're going to just now experience even greater hunger, less fullness, and you're going to be more likely to fall off your diet. So, as seeing, if we really look at it, one of the main reasons why people fail their diets and why diets fail is because of hunger. And you know, if you're someone that you're not dialing in the food quality aspect of your diet, you're doing yourself a disservice when it comes to not only feeling satiated day to day, but also being able to set yourself up for success to successfully adhere to a diet long term and to be able to get results as well as maintain them. Because if you're really just trying to think about, there's theories within psychology where there's a lot of people that are there's an actual term for it. I'm blanking out on it currently, but they're pretty much instant gratification focused, and so they'll sacrifice their long term version of themselves for their short term version of themselves. So they're only thinking in the moment, whereas you should be thinking long term in terms of what is this decision now? How is it going to impact me next week, a month from now, 3 months from now? So if you set yourself up from the beginning of a diet in a way that you're only going after hyper palatable, tasty foods, you're trying to fit everything in, so you're quote unquote flexible, but you have a 12-week diet in place, or that's your plan, and you can't get past the first 2 or 3 weeks, you're not setting yourself up for success. So really, I try to think long term with food choices and really try to help clients avoid that.
I think that was really well summarized and bow tied for that point. Now, the next one we want to talk about is how effective is the if it fits your macros approach for fat loss?
This is a hobby horse of mine, my man.
All right,
I have to speak about this with clients every day.
Okay, I'm gonna let you talk because I think the audience might get two different perspectives here. So I'm gonna hit mine first, and I'll let you go. I think it depends upon context. Meaning, I have a client came to me recently. It was drinking like 6 Coca-Colas a day and things like that, and was very resistant to the idea of eating better. Like, you know what I mean? So I discussed if it fits your macros as a way to co-opt him into trying to do it my way and like seeing it, because I've just found that when people can step back and see, it's like clients who don't track the weekends. I'm like, well, that's why you don't know why you're not getting results. Like, you literally stop tracking Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That's like 3 out of 7 days. Like, that's like trying to track money in the stock market and just fucking not paying attention for 3 days. That's your only job. You know what I mean?
That's 42% of your week.
Exactly, 100%. So for me, I think from a coaching perspective, it depends upon what they're trying to do. So like if I have a client trying to lose 100, 150 pounds, which are some of my clients that I've helped, you have to meet them in the middle. And I think if it fits your macros approach is amazing for people who are obese, morbidly obese, who already have like, they're just wired for those kind of foods, as a way to meet them in the middle and understand why they're making the mistakes they are, why they're not making the progress they are. I think for your athletes, I think for your weekend warriors and stuff like that, if it fits your macros, can be helpful, like if you're on vacation. But if you're ultimately looking for maximal fat loss, in my opinion, if it fits your macros, does not work. But I think in contextual situations, it might be a good thing to begin with and get people like, trying to do what you're doing. And I've had some great experience with that. So if you're a coach listening, or if you're a client listening, you might not want to be shredded like Brandon and I, or 10 or 12% like the guys in 300. Maybe you're just happy with being like 18, 20 and stuff like that. If it fits your macros, might be fine. But if you really want to like go far, especially in a fat loss phase, I'm sorry, food quality, in my opinion, just matters. I've read too many books about it.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with there needs to be context behind this question and how we approach it. And it's also going to be based on the individual client that we're working with. So I have a lot of intermediate clients, intermediate trainees or advanced trainees that are trying to get to the next level. And so they're looking to get real lean. We're talking sub 10% for men and sub 20% for females. So we have to go, when your goals are you have a higher threshold for the goal, or you have a more extreme goal, the methods will have to be more extreme in terms of how you take it. I don't mean extreme from a health perspective, but a little bit more structured, a little bit more regimented. So I believe in flexible dieting. So I believe in being flexible with food choices and food swaps, but still considering the food value or food quality aspect of the diet. Whereas a lot of times when I see people come to me and they are from the if it fits your macros approach, it's more of just a focus around calories. And they kind of have,
Right.
many of these people, they'll argue that calories are all that matters for fat loss. And when we really look at it, like we look into the literature, as far as body weight is concerned, they're right because energy balance is what controls your scale weight. But what I really try to get some across to my clients is a lot of these individuals tend to overlook the macronutrient composition and the quality of the foods that make up your macros. And those two things, so your macronutrient distribution and your food quality, is what will determine the quality of the body composition you attain. So if you're only concerned about calories and you're disregarding protein, some of these people come to me in this if it fits your macros crowd, they only look at calories. So really when I look at their protein, they're a little bit protein deficient, or they're taking in a low yield of protein, especially they're taking in a lot of low quality protein sources that are incomplete protein sources, meaning that they don't have all 9 essential amino acids nor 20 the full 20 complete amino acids. And so it's important to realize that all calories are created equal, but not all sources of calories are created equal. So, despite two foods containing equal calorie amounts, they can have drastically different effects on our satiety and our fullness, and can either make the diet easier or harder to adhere to, which is especially important consideration when it comes to succeeding in a fat loss phase. So, although we could technically and theoretically eat whatever we want, so those in the FM Fit Your Macros cards, like they're right from a theory perspective. You can eat whatever you want for the most part and lose fat as
Sure.
long as your protein intake and your calories are accounted for. But when, that super flexible if it fits your macros approach isn't something I've seen many succeeded in my last 10 years of coaching, both in terms of people that have come to me and then people that I've worked with. Because whenever I've had strong proponents or followers of if it fits your macros dieting come to me wanting to finally lose the fat that they've been looking to lose in the past few years, I always go back to what have you been doing? And I'm looking for, they're saying they're a big fan of utilizing this approach. They love the flexibility behind it, but they failed their last previous diet. So that's really where we have to pull back layers of the onion and say, well, if what you have been doing isn't getting you to where you want to be, maybe we have to adjust the approach in which we're taking. And so what I found is that a lot of times the main issue, like the cog in the wheel for these individuals that take this if it fits your macros approach, is poor food choice. Their poor choice in their food choices. And so, I've had these individuals come to me and I've looked over their previous diet plans and I've had them send me days of eating and their macro creations. You know what I mean? They're sending me pictures, they're
Right.
sending me logs. And a lot of times these individuals, their diets were made up of these delicious foods. Like the meals looked incredible. Believe me, they were super creative and they were nice to look at. But when I really started speaking to them about it, I started discussing not only the physiology, like what is it doing to their physiology from a dopamine and a habit perspective, but also like the time constraints, because we have to realize we cannot separate psychology from physiology. And what I found was when I would discuss with them, like what were their habits around creating meals or around food prep or around planning. And what I really came to see was that it not only was limiting them physically because it wasn't providing the satiety and the fullness, but they were also spending hours playing macro Tetris to try to fit these meals in.
Fuck
And
yeah.
then they were so small, especially towards the end of the diet, they were so small and like low in food volume and satiety that they left them ravenous, which increased their susceptibility and likelihood to fall off the diet. So I found that many of those who take this if it fits your macros approach to fat loss phases end up making the dieting process much more difficult for themselves than it's already going to be, which is why I like to build a foundation to the diet that features high satiety, high quality foods like your lean protein sources, your fiber containing fruits and vegetables, which encourage us to have a reduced calorie consumption and better compliance because they leave us more satiated. They hit our micronutrient needs and requirements, and they also leave us to feeling fuller for longer and less likely to experience craving, experience ravenous hunger, and be looking for other things. Because a lot of times when I've interacted with those that follow this very flexible, if it fits your macros approach to dieting, they would always comment on how they never felt full after meals, or like it was really good in the moment. They got that dopamine hit, like they felt great eating it, but then they weren't fueled like later on in the day, or they were quickly hungry, or they ate it and they wanted more. And a lot of times, like food, you guys have to realize that there is a neurobiology of food. So, meaning it impacts our neurotransmitters or our dopamine production. And food in natural form. So whole food is supposed to make you feel more satiated and fuller after you eat it than when you started. Whereas a lot of these highly processed, hyperpalatable foods, they trigger the hedonic reward system in the brain, and they actually drive us to want to eat more. So if you notice that you're fitting in donuts or cookies or Oreos into your diet, and but you're eating a few, and you notice that you want more after, like you're hungrier after eating some than you were at the start,
Yeah, that sucks.
that should set off an alarm in your brain, like this is not a great dieting food, especially when I'm trying to maintain a calorie deficit.
I agree with you. All right. Last point, my friend. Man, this has been a good one, say. Many different views expressed. The downsides of not considering food quality during a fat loss diet. I'll just summarize it from my end. You just won't get maximal results. I've done it both ways. I can tell you, I can see it in my look. I can see it how I feel. And I just think that if you're going to go through a fat loss phase, make sure you're set up for success, get the shit done and get out. And that's kind of like my wisdom of 27 years of doing this, because the last thing you want is to keep like going good and then fuck it up and having to restart. Like it's just an awful process. And if anything, it mentally takes its toll on a lot of things to do with your self-esteem and your capabilities. So like Brandon said, remove the decisions. That way you don't have decision fatigue and just do the hard stuff. Do the hard stuff. Do the hard work. But B, I'll let you expound it better because you're better with words. And I simplify that shit down in a sense. Problem with me being a copywriter now.
I actually was going to hit on the mental fatigue aspect, but I think you encapsulated that great. So I'll take more of you took the psychology route. I'll take the physiology route. How about that?
Let's go with that. Sure.
All right. So ultimately, there are a ton of downsides that come along with not considering food quality. And I think a lot of these are overlooked, and a lot of people don't consider them until they're in the diet and they've experienced them themselves. And so I'll tell you both from experience, having taken different approaches myself and disregarded food quality. Like I said, in 2014, I did a prep where it was strictly if it fits your macros. I fit in enlightened every day or whatever. I did protein bars and this, that, and the other. And it wasn't like shit quality food, but it was like I just was not satiated. I felt starving all the time. And that was what popular influencers were doing. But I'm, at this point, I'm, almost 10 years past it, 8 years ago. I'm many diets deep, and I take more of a whole food quality based approach with a consideration for my macronutrient targets and calorie budget, because ultimately that's what governs my ability to lose body fat. And so really when it comes down to it, we have to look at the hierarchy of importance for a diet. And we know that compliance and sticking to the diet or sticking to a deficit is the foundation to effectively losing fat. So following an approach that doesn't consider food quality makes the diet harder to stick to due to providing less satiety and leaving you more predisposed to experiencing even greater increases in hunger and appetite. And this is something I've seen many struggle with when taking this approach that doesn't consider food quality. And this is also what we see in research when we look at, studies that compare diets comprised of, processed nutrient devoid foods versus unprocessed nutrient dense whole foods. So, a few years ago, I think I've covered this study a few times on this podcast or on other podcasts throughout the years, but Kevin Hall did a randomized control study where it was a crossover study and a metabolic ward looking at both unprocessed or minimally processed foods versus unprocessed foods. And so, or what I mean by that is ultra processed foods versus minimally processed foods. And so, what his research group did was they essentially took two diets and put these individuals on both diets for 2 weeks each. So, what they would do is within the crossover design, they had each individual that was in the study do 2 weeks on one diet, washout period, 2 weeks on the other diet, and they crossed them over, meaning that one person, one group would go through the processed diet first and then the unprocessed diet, and vice versa. So one would start with the unprocessed diet and then go to the processed diet. And the reason that crossover designs are so impactful, first of all, they're randomized controlled, so they're the highest level of an individual study that we can have, besides a meta-analysis, which is a study of randomized controls trials and other, high levels of evidence. But it's also really important because it takes out the individual aspect of things, because every person acts as their own control. We could see, if Jeff was in the study, he would follow both diets, and then we would compare the results that Jeff got on the processed diet as compared to Jeff in the unprocessed diet. So they're really able to see how does the individual person respond to this specific dietary intervention. So what they did was they took in both conditions and they matched both the meals across both the unprocessed and the ultra processed condition They matched them for calories, sugar, fat, fiber, and macros, including protein. So everything was equated for, but they let them eat ad libitum, meaning that they ate to their own fullness level. Well, what they found was that when those same individuals were in the processed diet group, so they were in the ultra processed diet, they ate more than 500 calories more per day than when they were in the unprocessed group.
Hmm.
And so, in that condition, in the processed diet group, they actually gained over 2.2 pounds of fat during those 2 weeks. Whereas in the unprocessed diet, when they ate whole foods, in that diet, they lost over 2 pounds of fat without trying to lose any body fat. Because remember, it was to eat to fullness. So they weren't inducing them at a surplus or a deficit. It was eating, what would theoretically be should have been their maintenance calories. However, due to the palatability of the foods and due to the processing level of the foods, it dramatically impacted the body composition results they get. And so what we have to realize is that, you know, the quality of the foods that you eat aren't going to just affect how you feel in terms of, from a function perspective, but also how much you want to eat, your drive to eat, your ability to feel full and satiated. And so this is a big, hammer that you could lay down by just utilizing, lower energy density, higher quality foods, as we discussed in last week's podcast. But there's a bunch of other effects that, utilizing or disregarding food quality can have, because when it comes down to it, we have to consider the fact that you are not what you eat, we're what we digest and absorb. So if
It's true.
you're not considering food quality, and you're just, eating whatever, it can negatively impact your digestion, which will impair your training performance, especially if the foods that you're eating are leading to, like Jeff experienced, inflammation or bloating and discomfort. Also, when you're eating, less processed or more processed foods within the context of an if it fits your macros diet, these diets and these food sources in and of themselves provide less micronutrients, which can impact your body composition from a hormonal perspective, as many of our hormones require micronutrient cofactors, which are generally found in nutrient dense
Yeah.
foods. And I'll tell you from my own experience, one of the most common hormonal issues I see in new clients when they come to me and I look at their blood work are thyroid issues. And I'm sure you could say this as well. And
Yep.
so, many times people will come to me and they have this downregulated thyroid production. Now, a lot of people realize that your thyroid is the powerhouse of your metabolism, which regulates your metabolic rate and influences energy levels and body weight. But a lot of people don't realize the other crucial roles that thyroid plays, because thyroid attaches and docks in every receptor or every cell in the body. So it plays a crucial role in muscle growth and repair, in carb and fat metabolism, in digestion, in blood pressure regulation, heart rate, and many other important processes in the body. And the thing with thyroid is we need certain micronutrients to ensure we not only have an adequate production, but conversion as well of these thyroid hormones. So we need things like iodine, like zinc, tyrosine. They're all needed for the adequate production of both T4 and T3, and selenium, which is vital for converting
Yeah.
T4 into metabolically active T3. Because remember, guys, it's not about what's in the blood, it's what the cells are actually receiving. So we need that actual, it's not just T4 and your TSH levels. We need T3, which is the metabolically active form of thyroid. So we really do need to consider what we're getting from our foods, because a lot of times people are in an energy deficit as well as a micronutrient deficit. So they've induced a calorie deficit, but because they haven't accounted for other things on the back end, they are putting themselves in a nutrient deficit where, in my mind, I'm trying to get as much bang for my buck in terms of every calorie that I'm putting in a client's diet. I'm trying to get them nutrient density. If they have a 2,000 calorie budget, I'm trying to get them the max amount of nutrients for those calories that they have. And how I do that is by the food composition, the food selection, the food choices that we make.
Dude, I like it. I have nothing else to say that. The only thing I would say is what 70% of an active thyroid hormone is converted to active thyroid hormone T3 in the liver. So when you're eating a lot of those like processed foods, there's a lot of the different books you read that I've read will just say like, hey, it's causing the liver to be more inflamed, it's draining it more, therefore there's like this downward effect like Brandon talked about with the nutrients just not being there and your body's just having to burn through it. And once it burns through its allotment, well, shit, you're just SOL. And then other interesting thing, I think I read this the other day, like zinc and selenium is down by like what, over 50% or something in the soil like over like the last 100 years or some crazy like statistic like
Magnesium
that.
is even worse than that.
Yeah, I heard magnesium is just awful.
It's one
You
of the
know,
number one most depleted minerals
and
in the
that's something like I think we deal with as coaches. Clients come to us, and the first thing we're doing is like, "Hey, you need to take some supplements to refortify." Well, I don't want to be on the rest of my life. I'm like, but you don't mind being on like fucking the antidepressant and the acid reflux pills and all the other shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, come on, a pill's pill. But I think that that's going to be something that people could, we should do an episode about that, man, about like why supplements are necessary in today's modern world. Like, and that'd be a wheelhouse for you because, you did it for so damn long, but like your magnesium, stuff like that. Because I think the audience would be really shocked about how deplorable the condition of the quality of the actual food is, no matter if you eat organic or anything like that in between. It's just the soil itself is just being overcropped.
even if you look on the research on organic foods, it's not shining too bright for the micronutrient status within that because
Yeah,
in
exactly.
general, a lot of our soil is depleted both in conventional and in organic raised crops. So it's not looking so good. So that's always why I run a chronometer. I will run my clients' micronutrient statuses, and I do utilize, I don't want to say a lot of supplementation, but I fill in the gaps with what's necessary. And my other, caveat to that is a lot of times people will tell me that they don't want to dial these, things in, or they're a little bit hesitant. Like they don't want to, be switching vegetables every other meal because I'm utilizing a lot of nutrient diversity within their diets to fill in the gaps of their nutritional or their micronutrient deficiencies that they're facing. However, a lot of times we have to realize that, like I always say, for every give me, there's a gotcha. So a lot of times people will come to me and they have thyroid issues, and their doctor's looking at putting them on thyroid replacement on T4 or T3. And so we could take that route, or you could take that route. That is between you and your health provider, your medical practitioner. But there's other options because you're going to be on that for life, most likely. And other options would be either natural supplementation or just taking the whole foods route. And let's see what we could do by restoring your micronutrient values and your balance within your diet because you've been depleting yourself for quite some time, yo-yo dieting and not giving yourself enough calories, but not giving yourself enough in terms of both calories, in terms of energy, but also in terms of micronutrients. So I always like when a client comes to me and they're open-minded, let's take a whole foods first approach, food first approach, supplement second, and then if we need to utilize nutraceuticals or pharmaceuticals, that is a third line intervention. But really, I would like to get everything I can out of the diet. That's why I focus on nutrition first and foremost. Then I will turn to nutritional or lifestyle, implementation. So lifestyle would be, say someone's vitamin D deficient, I will try to get some more sunlight. But if they're too busy or they live in the northern hemisphere like I do, all right, we're going to utilize vitamin D supplementation. There's great research behind that. It's something that you are, obviously coming up with, deficient in your blood work. So it's something that we could replace. So it's really, there's a lot of context to be taken into consideration, but ultimately, the best way to solve a problem is not to have one. And so
100%.
really that's my approach in everything I do within the context of nutrition. And that's where I do think that it is valuable for people to consider their food quality because then they don't have to. If they're really dialing in their food quality, a lot of times they don't need as much supplements or as much pharmaceuticals or as much advanced lab testing and all these other, sexy and expensive, shortcuts or what they think are shortcuts. Generally, yes, it's going to take a longer period of time to, replete, micronutrient status through whole foods because of digestion rates and absorption rates and things of that sort. But it's a more long-term play because it's a habit you can implement into your life, on a daily basis and really reap the rewards out of. So, this is really where food quality comes into play. Remember, guys, like we said, both food quantity and food quality are especially important, but we really wanted to cover on today's episode the, how vital and crucial food quality is because it's something that's really been overlooked. And I think as a nutrition professional, this is something I want to highlight because there are a million other podcasts that will cover energy balance and calories, macros, targets and how to count your calories. And that's all well and good. That's stuff that at a beginner level we need. And when you're first getting into nutrition, obviously that's going to be extremely helpful. However, once you get 10 years into this or even more when you're at mine and Jeff's, career capacity, we need to start dialing in the nuances for people more and more. And that's where really having a good understanding of nutritional biochemistry and food composition and different micronutrients and things of that sort are really important. And that's something I often see as being disregarded and overlooked in our industry due to either lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, or just lack of a desire to really, peel back the layers in the onion and dig deeper for clients. So that's why we really wanted to cover it today.
Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, you guys got a lot of good insights from DNI. A lot of us, especially talking about like our coaching, perspectives, different lenses, we view things in the context of various scenarios. We really put a hell of a bow tie on this one, as I like to say today. B, man, where can everybody find you at?
Guys, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Brandon DeCruz _ or through email, which is bdecruzfitness@gmail.com.
I'm Jeff Unbreakable Black on IG, and I'll catch y'all later. Be sure to like, share, give us some love. We appreciate it, ladies and gentlemen. We only go through your all support, and we hope it's good enough. Y'all take care. Have yourself a great day. Peace.